I'm Jim Collison and live from the Gallup campus here in Omaha, Nebraska. This is Gallup's Theme Thursday, recorded on August 13th, 2015. Theme Thursday is a Gallup webcast series that dives deep into the CliftonStrengths Finder themes, one theme at a time, and today's theme is focus. If you have questions, comments, or contributions during the webcast, we do have a live chat room available for you. It's right below the main video window, so just head down there and click on Sign In so we know who you are and you can chat with us during the program. Really the best way to get your live questions in. We will answer those if you put them in the chat room. If you're listening to the recorded version or you need custom strengths coaching solutions for small, medium, or large organizations, just send us an email, coaching@gallup.com. And don't forget to visit the Gallup Strengths Center. That's just Gallup Strengths Center, all one word, .com, for your coaching resources and training needs. You can also catch the video and now streaming and downloadable audio for offline listening to past shows over at the Coaches blog. That's just coaching.gallup.com. Heather Wright is our host today. Heather works as a senior learning and development consultant here with Gallup. Heather, great to have you on great to have you on Theme Thursday. Forgot where I was. Welcome.
That's right. That's okay. Thanks, Jim. It's good to be here. I think this is my first Theme Thursday as a host. I've been a guest before, and as you mentioned, a Called to Coach host in the past. So I'm really excited to have Jim Harter here with us today. I'll introduce you to Jim in a minute here. Just many of you recognize the name Jim Harter because so many people who are Gallup fans and Gallup Strengths enthusiasts also are well aware of the work that we've done in the realm of employee engagement and well-being. And Jim Harter is our chief scientist in the workplace management and well-being sciences here at Gallup. So when I think about him and the depth of the research that he's done, I think we're going to get a great glimpse into focus as it applies to a scientific approach and a researcher's approach. So very excited for you to all meet Jim and glad that he agreed to join us. Jim and I have both been here at Gallup for a long, long time. So we've grown up together here at Gallup, and neither of us look as old as our years of experience here at Gallup would indicate. So typically with Theme Thursday, we start out with a little bit of the overture of the theme, and I want to take just a minute to give you a little bit of insight into the focus theme. For those of you who have studied this theme, some of the things that you know about focus is it has a single-mindedness to it. It has that goal orientation to it. When I think about focus, I think about a light at the end of the tunnel and the ability to follow those tracks toward that goal. And even if you might get pulled off occasionally, it's the ability to get back on track quickly and continue the pursuit of the goal. As we define focus through the CliftonStrengths Finder, people exceptionally talented in the focus theme are people who take direction, follow through, and make the necessary corrections to stay on track. They're excellent at prioritization. But it's not just prioritizing, it's also taking that action. So I'm excited for us to hear Jim help us explore that today. People with focus think about goals being their compass. That compass helps them figure out what ought to be my priorities, and if I need to make an alteration to that set of goals, I'll do so to stay the course. Focus becomes powerful for individuals because it allows them to filter, to sort, to mentally organize perhaps. And I think about people with focus having kind of that instinctual ability to evaluate everything that they do, to say, gosh, if I do this, does it take me one step closer to my goal or not? And I might choose what I do accordingly. In the end, people with focus tend to be efficient because that ability to prioritize makes sure we're doing what's efficient and effective. I love having people with focus on my team because that single-mindedness enables people to kind of speed up what they do and the quality of their performance, and it helps keep us all on track. So when you think about the power and edge to focus, if people are starting to go down different paths or taking different approaches, the focus can get people back to the main road. They help the rest of us avoid time-consuming distractions that might not really be of value in the long run. So when you see focus in action, those with focus around us, they're the people that take that direction, follow through, correct and stay on track. They prioritize, then act. They set goals that help them be effective and efficient. There's perseverance sometimes with focus. It's that ability to stay with something for a long period of time, and sometimes maybe even lose yourself in timelessness while pursuing a goal. And people with focus also tend to instinctively have that ability to honor timelines and commitments. So they're well aware of the due date or the goal date, and pursue that as they make their way through. I oftentimes think about people with focus describe themselves as being very intensely and intentionally single-minded. So it's, I'm going to pursue this, and that's going to be my goal, and I'm not going to let other things take me off track. They will persevere until the goal's reached. They bring to the team a sense of clarity because of their concentration and their focus on direction, and they need a goal in order to establish their priorities. Focus will claim to love starting with the end in mind. So the focused person is better off when they know where we're headed in the long run before I start taking my first steps in the journey. If you want to drive your focus friends a little bit crazy, try just going off on tangents. That will get them fired up. And oftentimes your friends with focus will be the people that you describe as being in a zone. They get in a zone and they kind of love their time when they're in their zone. So Harter, I'm curious to hear some of your zone moments. I always feel compelled that we have to share a little bit about the barrier labels. So when I think about the barrier labels that people with focus oftentimes will report, they talk about sometimes I can be that person who's intense. Sometimes people view me from the outside as stressed out because of my focus, think I have a tough time relaxing, or I'm rude in what I'm doing. One client this morning mentioned to me that she really has put this on her mirror, in a couple of places where she frequents, to remind her that the destination, my focus on the destination, may limit my enjoyment in the moment, or the enjoyment of the journey. And I think that may be for some people with focus. There's such intentionality and intensity around the goal that at times we aren't in the present and really relishing that moment. But I always think about with focus, one of the things that a person with focus might say is, I have a goal, where a person with futuristic might say, hey, I have a dream. And focus will usually say, I have a goal I plan to reach. A person with discipline says, I have a plan to reach my goal. So when I think about focus, I have it myself. Jim Harter, you lead with focus in your top 5. It's number 2 for you. When we think about the themes and the combinations of themes, what shows up most frequently, least frequently, it was interesting to me as I studied your 34 theme sequence. You have achiever at number 1, which is the most likely theme we find pairs with focus. So you're very typical and normal. So just to reassure you in case you weren't feeling normal today, least likely to pair with focus is the talent theme of connectedness. Also pretty unlikely would be adaptability, belief, or context, and a couple of those are lower down on your list. So just always interesting to see. I'm always looking for that person that might have one of those least likely, along with the focus. To find someone who has connectedness and focus together would be fascinating to those of us who coach strengths. But with that, I think, gosh, that's a little bit about focus, and I'm sure some things have resonated for you as I've been talking, Jim. Just to bring you in on the conversation, I'm excited to have you here, because when I think of focus, I think of you. When I think about the work that you do, and just even walking by your office on occasion, and just how you can be so intently immersed in the work that you're doing. And I was teasing Jim earlier, all of the audience should know that, you can't just sit and rock like you've got a big juicy pile of data in front of you today, and zone in on that data. That we're excited to hear from you about focus. And so to introduce, I want to welcome Jim Harter, Ph.D., to the program. Dr. Harter is, as I mentioned earlier, Chief Science of Workplace Management and Well-Being here at Gallup, and you've really made a career out of the science of engagement and well-being, and really connecting some fabulous pieces together here at Gallup. So welcome, thanks for joining today to talk about focus, and maybe just right off the bat, Jim, tell us a little bit about your own version of focus. When we're coaching people, we always encourage them to kind of highlight or personalize the parts of focus that resonate with them. So I'm sure our audience would love to hear from you. When you think about focus, what parts of that theme definition really hits home for you?
Well, hi, Heather. Thank you, and hello, everybody. Good to be with you today. I think for me, focus it is sort of an intensity. It's some people might perceive it as a seriousness, but in the end, I think of focus as a theme that really makes work and life fulfilling, because it's about being absorbed in something. Mm-hmm. And setting a goal and spending some time on that goal to really try to make a discovery. In my world, it's about making some scientific discoveries that can be applied. But I think for me also, it's about, I've always thought of science as something that you don't just do to make discoveries, you do it because there's a purpose behind the discovery, and the discoveries are to be applied. And so it helps me kind of look at research from that angle to think about what we can discover that can be applied so that people can use those discoveries in their everyday lives. So that's what I think of it. I think of it, a lot of it is about goals. It's about staying on course to those goals, and fighting through some resistance a lot of times also. Yeah, so I've seen that during different stages of my life.
Talk a little bit. We know that one of our most curious questions about our guests on Theme Thursday is always about, when did you first notice that this talent was a part of who you were? Can you think back, and when you reflect back, do you go, that's what it was, that's when it was emerging in who I am as a person?
I think I really noticed it the most in college. Now there's some I can think back to when I was a kid, and there's some things that happened then as well. But college is when it really hit home to me that I had an ability to kind of fight through some resistance for getting a degree and working a lot of jobs, working several jobs at the same time, and where there's a lot of distractions, and still persevering to get the right courses, to continually try to add on courses that fit areas that I'm interested in. I try to do that somewhat in high school as well. High school wasn't as difficult, but actually with that busyness of college, working and doing college at the same time, I think it made it a little easier actually, because the work I was doing fit into some goals that I had. Mm-hmm. And I noticed also that there's some obstacles I had to get over. When I was really young, I think my focus may have been seen in others through daydreaming.
A lot of dreaming, yeah. So you were still focused on the topic the teacher had covered an hour ago, and she'd moved on, and you weren't quite with her yet, huh?
Yeah. So in many cases, focus can be viewed by people who aren't, people that you're working with might think that you're out of focus when you're actually in focus. So it really kind of depends on the context. But when I was a kid, I was accused of daydreaming a lot, and probably still am today by many people. But I didn't, at that time, though, I didn't really think of it as focus. I just knew that I was trying to figure out what I was going to do with my life.
Mm-hmm. Good. Have you always been a goal setter? You've used that word goal a lot. Have you always been a goal setter? And I'm curious, as you think about that and your response, have you always set the goals for yourself, or has there been an outside influence that has kind of helped you set those goals?
I think having mentors all throughout life are really helpful. I think having partners that help you think about what you can do that's most meaningful and practical, and that can have the most influence. I think those kind of mentors have been really influential for me in my life. But in the end, as an individual, I have to own the goal and kind of set it myself with that kind of guidance. And I think when I own it and set it myself, and then I've also learned, as time's gone on, that you got to be really good at adjusting goals. You've got to always think about the end result of what you're doing, and not just do it to do it, but do it for a reason. And so adjusting and revising along the way, I think I've gotten better at that as time's gone on as well. And but the fun thing about setting goals for me is to set a goal that you can accomplish with other people.
And this is a perfect time for me to introduce, Jim, the rest of your themes, because I'm hearing a lot of your relator coming out as you're talking about mentors and working with others in adjusting your goals, and those are the best goals when they're with others. So Jim has number 1 is achiever, focus is number 2, followed by learner, relator, and futuristic. So, I mean, that really stands out to me, just even the idea of a mentor even helping your futuristic and your focus kind of feel more comfortable with, oh yeah, this would be the right path to pursue, or I've got a goal over here, but does that fit in, or how does that fit into my future, and kind of using that relator to find the right people to get you there. Talk a little bit about focus and achiever in yourself.
Okay.
Have you witnessed kind of the intensity of that combination? Because I think about, the focus gives you the direction, but the achiever gives you the diligence. And you've talked a lot, I've heard it loud and clear, about perseverance, overcoming the obstacles. And it kind of sounds like that the achiever feeds into helping you stay on task with that goal that your focus has created.
Yeah, I think of the achiever as more day-to-day. So I think of goals from 2 perspectives. There's long-term goals, and then there's shorter-term goals. You can even think of it from 3, I guess. You could, and I guess I do think of it this way, that there's the really long-term goals, there's the annual goals, and then there's the weekly or daily goals that you're setting. And the achiever really fits into the weekly or daily that are designed to keep you on task toward the annual and the longer term. So but there can still be some friction between achiever and focus. So setting a goal, and you might have opportunities to achieve something in the short term that might not be in line with those longer term goals. So there's always some adjustment you have to make to do that. And we work in a pretty busy organization with a lot of different options to work on different things, and we work with a lot of different organizations, and so there's a lot of opportunity to achieve different things in different areas. But I think the focus kind of it kind of guides my achiever, I guess, over time, and helps me pick the right thing. So the prioritization thing you mentioned earlier, I think, fits there.
Does it? Yeah, and that's what I was going to ask. Even if you could kind of give us a day in the life of Jim Harter, the researcher. I asked Jim if you could boil it down in a nutshell, what would you call yourself in terms of professional title? And I think we came up with So in, a day in the life of Dr. Harter. Talk a little bit about how this focus shows up, and when you talk about the demands of so many clients and the opportunity to achieve and cross things off your list, how do you rely on your focus? Who do you rely on through your relator to help you stay prioritized or achieve your priorities along with a team's priorities and an organization's priorities?
Well, I kind of go back to the longer term goals first in terms of setting priorities and resetting them. And one of them I have is to change the nature of the workplace in the world. So we've got a measurement on the world's workplaces and their engagement levels, and they're too low. Right here in the U.S., they're too low. They're even lower worldwide. And one goal I have is to affect that. And to do that, I've got to, and so I guess one word I would use for thinking about it a little bit more is probably advice, because all of our science has to be geared toward giving people advice to reach that outcome. And that helps me sort through what we work on a regular basis that might give people the kind of advice that they need to change their workplaces for the positive, to clarify people's expectations, to build developmental kinds of relationships where people have a chance to flourish and reach the objectives, the performance objectives that the organizations have that we're working with. And so, you know, that's kind of how I think about it. It's not always perfect. You know, with focus comes some frustration because there's a lot of things to work on and a lot of different, but that's how I kind of sort through it on a regular basis. And then you asked who I work with. We've got a great team of researchers here that just fun to work with. And we work together on all of our projects, but you know, making discoveries together, I think, is really fulfilling.
Good, good. Talk a little bit about focus and futuristic, because when I think about that combination, it kind of goes with what you were saying about, you know, the 3 stages of thinking, and there's the big long-term goal, there's kind of the moment, there's the day-to-day. I think about hearing you talk about changing the workplace environment, changing how people's engagement levels are around the world as kind of that big goal. Does your futuristic dream about what a world would be like if engagement was different? You know, is it kind of those dreams for a future become your daily reality because your focus partners with your futuristic? And is that how you advise clients that you work with?
Yeah. I mean, the future part is the longer term. I mean, that kind of guides. I guess you could think that guides my focus in a sense. Focus kind of guides achiever, and the future part kind of guides the focus. Because my approach, and I don't think that much about the past. You know, we've done a lot of research, and we can always reference the research we've done in the past. And I like reminiscing from time to time, but most of my thinking is about what's to come, what hasn't been yet.
Yeah.
And so future kind of plays into it that way for me.
Well, and that kind of fits with when we look at the correlations between futuristic. Context is one of the less frequently found. For you, it comes in at like 29. So yeah, you don't want to dwell on the past too much. I love how you say you reference the data, because you are a scientist. You do want to see kind of where we've come, but you probably are more excited about what could be for an organization or for the nation or for the global engagement numbers than the trend of the past, huh?
Yeah, and I like to always put everything in the context of the past. I think that's really important because it helps you not waste time on what you're working on for the future. So you're not reinventing the wheel continuously. So I think that's both are very important. But just the way I naturally think is more about what's to come, and that kind of guides those other 2 themes we talked about.
Learner's one of your top 5, and I'm always curious how. You know, it's interesting because it sounds like it's coming through loud and clear. Learners, oftentimes, your interests shape your intentions. There's also times when your intentions shape your interests. And I'm curious about that interplay between focus and learner. Do you stay on track with your learning goals because you have focus, or does your focus, do your priorities get fed and fueled because you are passionate about certain topics and subjects?
I think, you know, in the science world we'd call it somewhat of a reciprocal relationship, but probably a bit more focus driving the learner than the reverse, because generally I pick up and learn things that fit into some kind of goal or some application we're thinking about for organizations that we work with and for people in general, so that they can make a difference in their lives and their organizations. And so sometimes I'll pick up something that we learn, though, that will drive, you know, what we focus on. So I think it's both, but probably a bit more focus driving the learner. I think of for me, learner really fits into that kind of absorption part of focus, where I have to plan for that. By the way, I've got to schedule it. So I've scheduled days where I can spend an entire day working on something without interruptions. And if I don't get that, I don't really get the same kind of fulfillment from my work. So the learner kind of fits in there. So I'm doing some research, or I'm working on writing something, whatever it might be, that allows me to kind of grow as a person and to get that. And that's the time when time just flies by.
Yeah.
Where if I did that every day of my life would seem really short, I think.
Very good. Yeah, the long days are when you're not getting to learn or stay on track toward your goal, right?
Right.
Okay. I'm curious to have you talk a little bit about well-being and how it relates to all of your talent themes if you want, but especially to focus. How has your focus, I know you've done a lot of research and been studying well-being. I'm curious personally for you though, you strike me as someone who has really good well-being. It seems as though it's been a goal for you, not only because of the science and the research, maybe because of what you've learned through what you've done in that field. You keep evolving your life in a very well-being driven way. I'm curious how focus has helped you. I mean, talk about how your focus kicks in every day to help you live kind of your best life.
Well, I set, and we do this, everybody does this at Gallup, but we set well-being goals annually, and I try to make them as practical as they possibly can be, like body fat percentage is a physical one that drives me, so everything I do around exercise or what motivates me to eat the right kinds of things is really that, to try to improve that number. So I set specific goals on that. I set specific goals on getting involved in as much community work as I possibly can. And that kind of comes and goes with time depending on what my kids are involved with, and that gets adjusted over time as well, but I try to re-gauge that every time. I set specific goals around spending time with my family and activities there, activities my wife and kids are involved in. Mm-hmm. So I actually have numerical goals on that. I try to keep. I'm trying to, let's see, all five of the well-being elements really. From a career, it's based on projects, and goals, and those, like I mentioned earlier, do get adjusted throughout the year based on what's most relevant and important throughout the year. Mm-hmm. But I start off the year with some big project goals, and we tend to get those done. And so I take each well-being element kind of one at a time, and then I also try to think about how those five elements of well-being, career, social, physical, financial, and community, how they interact, so that I'm doing things and setting goals that kind of force me to do things that hit on multiple elements mm-hmm. at the same time. So a community bike ride kind of event might hit on, I might get to see some coworkers there. I might also, in some events we get involved in, you can donate some money to it. So that hits on financial. There's also, of course, a social aspect to it, physical aspect to it, of course. And so that's another thing I think is helpful, is to think about how those elements interact in setting goals.
Good, very good. So as you talk about your goal setting, I'm curious, you talk about starting the year with some big goals and on an annual basis setting some well-being goals. I'm curious about how often do you revisit your goals?
I wouldn't say continually, but pretty much. I mean, not every day, mm-hmm. but yeah, I take a look at them very often. In fact, I have a to-do list every day that I write. In fact, other people probably do this too. Sometimes I write down things I did just so I can cross them off. That's the achiever, by the way.
Yeah, that is the
things I've already done. But yeah, I revisit them pretty frequently. The daily ones, of course, I'm looking at all the time, but the annual ones I'll revisit maybe on a monthly basis to make sure we're on the right track on those.
Mm-hmm. See, and I think that's interesting because I'm not sure a lot of people revisit their goals that often. In fact, our team prints them out and puts them on our desk, and I think there's some people that they get pretty dusty on the frames because those goals don't necessarily get pulled up, looked at, revisited. Do you find yourself ever revising your goals?
Oh yeah, and in fact that's an area that I've gotten a lot better at over time. So you're not just doing things to to accomplish a goal. You know, you might get a little fulfillment from it, but you get the most fulfillment if you accomplish something that really has an impact in a project that people can apply. You know, it's for me, a scientific project that I can see people actually do something with. That's a lot more fulfilling, and so I've gotten better, I think, as I've gotten older at adjusting so that I'm doing the most relevant things, not assuming that what I thought was most relevant at the start of the year still is. So yeah, I think I found that to be really important.
That's kind of a nice example, Jim, of going from the raw to the mature of a talent, where maybe as a kid you did something, you finished something because, by gosh, I had told somebody I was going to do it. You know, that was my goal. Or even in your own heart or mind, you said, I'm going to do that, and so I've got to finish it. Where now you can say, you know what, even midstream, if this isn't turning out the way we thought it would, I can let it go and I can transition to something that's more of a priority or more relevant or will take us faster to the bigger picture or the larger goal. Interesting. Good example. Really good example. Collison, do we have some questions?
we have a bunch.
Yes, we do. I knew we would have lots for Dr. Harter. Okay.
Busy chat room here.
Good.
So Rachel had asked right up front, and Heather, maybe I'll direct this to you to start. She said it'd be great to hear more about why there's unlikely and likely pairings. You mentioned those pairings that we have, and maybe we could talk a little bit about why. I'd mentioned this in the pre-show with Jim. Woo and communication are likely pairings. I'd asked him our discipline and focus likely pairings. Why are they and why aren't they?
Well, either one of us could address that. You have the answer?
To the discipline one, it's 1%, so it's pretty low. 1% chance that you have both discipline and focus in your top 5.
Okay.
Yeah, and that's kind of surprising, I think, to a lot of our audience. I think a lot of people think about that goal orientation and then the structure, order, and routine to achieve those goals, but they're really different passions. I think the discipline craves that order and structure, but it isn't always necessarily aimed at something in the future, where the focus definitely is. And just, Rachel, for your knowledge and others that are curious too, that really comes from the data of the over 12 million people in our database who have taken StrengthsFinder, of just, if you look at all the 12 million plus that have taken it so far and look at their theme sequence, if they have a theme up high in that theme sequence, how likely is it that another one would be in their top 5? So it's really just an analysis of what shows up in the top 5 based on that sample size of 12 million people.
Jim, do you have focus with all the other themes in front of you? I kind of forced you in looking up discipline, but if I ask you a few other ones, would you be able to tell me, or is that something you have to look up?
I don't have it in front of me.
Okay, no problem. Did you ping Asplin on that one?
I did.
Okay.
I can ping him again.
No, that's okay.
Well, and I've got, let's see, I don't have my list in front of me either. I jotted down the focus ones, but I don't have the others.
Osama had asked focus being paired with a ranger, adaptability, and strategic. Those were the 3. I assume that's in there. How likely are those? So maybe we'll look that up and we can get to that later. He also asked, how do people with focus handle distractions? So, Jim, in your experience, you alluded to this, a whole day to get stuff done, but certainly you can't always get that full day. How do you handle it? How do you handle it well? So it's maybe a balcony of handling it well, and how do you not handle it well in a basement?
Yeah, okay. That's probably where focus for me can appear a bit rude sometimes, but I think that my relator can cushion that a bit. So I'll be working in my office. By the way, that one day sometimes doesn't happen as I planned it, and I don't get that every week like I want, just because of priorities. But so somebody might come to my office, and we have these open windows, so they can see I'm in my office, and so I'm working away, head down, trying to get something done. They come in, can I talk to you for 2 minutes, and it ends up being, of course, every time 30 minutes, but that's okay, that's great. But my initial thinking is it feels like a distraction initially until I look at them and see them, and it's like, oh, this will be great, we'll have a good conversation. So I think the relator helps a lot with that. But there is, if I'm really honest, that there's an initial, and this is due to my focus, I think maybe achiever too, but there's an initial point where it's like, dang it, I've got to stop what I'm thinking about.
I love that.
Osama also asked the question, and I think you alluded to it, can focus make others see you as insensitive?
Yeah,
Huh?
I think it can.
And let me follow that up with when we talk about how do people with focus feel about inefficiencies in actions. So when you see that, not just the interruption, but the inefficiency in it, is that a component of focus for you, Jim?
Yeah, I do get irritated by inefficiency because I feel like it wastes time. Now I know that through the natural course of work, you're always going to have to work out efficiencies, and nothing's ever efficient. So that's just part of working in a workplace or being anywhere for that matter. But yeah, I try to make things as efficient as I possibly can because there's a limited amount of time, and that achiever part kind of fits in there too, trying to get some things done in a limited amount of time. And we've all got a limited amount of time, and we've got some things we're trying to get done together, and we'll all be more fulfilled if we get those things done. So yeah.
You know, this is a question that kind of fits along those lines, Jim, that came from my accelerated strengths coaching course that's occurring this week. One of my participants wanted to know what you think your manager, and I'll add your coworkers, need to know about someone with high focus. What would you want your manager and your coworkers to know about working with you, getting the best out of you, being the best collaborator and partner with you because of your focus?
Well, I think honor those. I see this a lot in our workplace that people do honor that. They see we've got our themes up on our front of our door, and I've heard people comment, "I saw you're in focus, so I didn't, I let you keep working," kind of thing. And so I think it's important just to know that you're not trying to be rude. You're just trying to get something done, and you're kind of absorbed. And when you're absorbed in something, you might feel like you're not involved in other things, and you may not be in the moment, but you're still interested. So honor that as much as possible, but also know that there are questions, and there's things we need to do in the moment as well. So I totally understand that and appreciate that. And like I said, I like questions a lot.
Okay.
And so the questions and the comments and the input and all that stuff is really important to me in terms of just me as a person.
So a lot of that, sometimes it sounds like almost your learner can kind of, if someone's putting themselves there in front of you, your focus can almost accommodate because your learner's there saying, well, this distraction may have a opportunity to learn from it. And so that can be part of what helps you get there. Because go ahead.
I was just going to say, and there are strategies also, like I said, so you have times when you, for me, I work at home once in a while when I know when I need that kind of absorption time on something. So you can build strategy around it. And I know when I come to the office, I'm going to be collaborating with people. That's just part of the deal. And so you're going to have less of the, 8 hours of straight work where you feel like it's 2 hours. And you're going to have a lot more back and forth across a lot of different types of projects, which doesn't, fit completely into focus, but the way I can rationalize it is it fits into our future, and it fits into what we're trying to get done for the future.
And it probably fits your relator too, if that back and forth and interaction is with the circle that you've really, like you said, you've got a great team that you love working with. Your relator probably runs pretty deep with that crowd, and therefore they don't feel as much like an interruption as a complete stranger would.
Right.
Interesting.
Right. Yeah. I feel like people feel comfortable enough that they can come whenever they want. And I do too. I distract them too sometimes.
So it isn't always. Okay. So another one for you that kind of fits along this line is, how do you embrace or see value in the detours when your tendency is to stay on track because of the focus?
Well, I think the detours almost always add value because it brings you out of what you're in and gives you another perspective, and that helps you adjust. And so I think if the detour is something irrelevant, then the focus kind of brings brings you back to what's relevant, keeps you persevering through that detour. You find your way back. But more times than not, detours will make everything better, because it just provides, that's probably the learner, I guess, provides more context. It provides just more information to whatever problem you're trying to solve.
Good. Jim Collison, what else do you have?
Yeah, so Brent had asked also in chat, how do we best use focus in coaching others? We've got a bunch of coaches listening right now here, both locally and in around the world. Heather, let you start with that. When you think about coaching coaches on coaching people and they have focus, what are some tips on how to really use that appropriately?
Well, one of the things that jumps off the page at me as a coach who has focus in her top 5 is that I always want to know what's the goal for the client when I'm coaching them. What do they want to get out of this? What are their goals? I almost start every conversation with that goal orientation. So, as you think about yourself as a coach and how you could use your focus, I think it's about setting goals, but also then keeping the client on track. When you only have a certain amount of time to have impact, in the back of my mind, I kind of have an agenda or a framework for what we need to get accomplished during that time. And it's easy to get off on tangents, especially when you're talking about strengths and about people's lives. And so that always kind of brings me back to just knowing and judging, hey, I've got to get all this done. And so that's how it plays out for me in coaching. Jim, your thoughts?
Yeah, I guess I'd relate to the same thing. It's about setting goals and figuring out how you can get done what you need to get done in the context of whoever you're working with, and whether it's a client or whether it's a big research project that could have impact on a much broader range of people in society. It all starts with goals, and then fill in the space with a lot of relevant activity around that.
Jim, does that change at all if those are just regular relationships? So you think about family relationships or friends. Does that focus take on a different, a different feel when it's not a professional relationship?
Well, it probably irritates my wife.
Who is listening, by the way?
Yes,
She's been emailing me during this.
What question?
She has high adaptability. Let me give you a metaphor. This is real. So we're driving down the road, and she says, "There's bugs on the windshield. Can you clear them off?" I look and I say, "What bugs?" "Oh, they're there." I'm looking way out. Don't even see. But no, I try to set social goals as well. Number of date nights, and I try to. That's part of my goal setting, and make sure I get to the right number of my kids' events. I know I can't be at every single one of them all the time because of travel, but I do turn down a lot of things to meet those goals. And so those are really important to me.
And that's a good point on the focus and turning down. I think sometimes we think that focus means more work, back to that idea of focus versus discipline, or focus versus activator, or right? In the sense that focus would actually benefit you in some ways when you set that goal to spend more time with your family. I think a lot of people think of focus in only professional terms, right? So like when I'm at work, I'm focused. 2 or 3 times now in this interview, we've heard you say you apply this to your family. So you set specific goals for family time. And I imagine that focus would help you stick to that, right? And if you're going to do it, if you say you're going to do it, and when you're focusing on that, I'm sure it doesn't feel forced or like I'm setting a goal. Guys, this is family time. I'm sure it doesn't work out that way for you, right?
No, I don't. I generally don't even announce those, but I try to hold myself to them. I guess I do. I guess I do somewhat, but no, I think it's really important if you have focus to use that theme in your overall life to improve your well-being, and set well-being goals, not just work goals. Because if you just apply it to your point, if you just apply it to work, you can be very imbalanced, stressed out, and I guess that's about all I have to say there.
Yeah, good. Eugene had asked a question I think ties in here. It says, does the combination of focus and learner make you a good person to be a scientist with those specific areas of expertise? In other words, because you have focus and learner, does that make you the ideal scientist? And are there other themes that can play into that as well?
Well, I can't speak to ideal. I know that those themes help me a lot in terms of getting scientific projects done and making sure that they're relevant to the groups we're trying to serve. So I think they help a lot with the relevancy. We've gotten our team has gotten over 1,000 studies done over the years, so it isn't, we get things done, and I think they've been applied. Not everything we do gets applied, but a lot of the things we do get applied, and I think it's helped me personally. I think you could be a great scientist with different combinations, though. I know different scientists that are very good at this role that have different combinations of themes than mine. So I think the biggest thing is understanding who you are and leveraging the heck out of that, so that and partnering with the right people. I mean, that's really important, because this kind of work doesn't get done in a vacuum. It gets done with a lot of collaboration.
Very good advice.
All right, we have one more time for one more question, and it says, can you explain why connectedness is the least likely pairing? Is it because focus has a natural ability to determine what is important or priority, but connectedness can find reasons why every goal is important? That's from Rachel, by the way, a follow-up question from Rachel.
Thanks, Rachel, for asking that. I don't know if I have much of a perspective. I haven't thought much about that yet. The interesting thing about when you think about putting the two together, it's when I intentionally concentrate my attention and efforts on the invisible spiritual mysteries of life, I find meaning. And maybe it is a little bit more of that goal orientation and that prioritization, where is really trying to see what exists between things that are currently present. And so it's really about what's in the moment and how does that all connect and relate from the future to the past, across all, where that focus tends to be more looking ahead than looking back or in the moment. But beyond that, I don't know that I haven't thought about that enough yet, Rachel. I'll have to ponder that one now that you've raised it. I'm curious myself.
Well, my wife has connectedness, and she sees a lot of the moment, and I tend to see the away from the moment. That's the bug on the windshield example, I guess. But I think that's the case. I think what you said is pretty accurate from my own experience. One of the things with these themes is that some of them will tend to be a little closer to opposites than others, while in general the instrument doesn't measure opposite themes. Some of them will have that tendency a little bit more than others. That means that they'll appear together less likely. Like context and future would be an example of that.
And it's really interesting discussions that we have when we see those unlikely pairings coming together in people. Then those are great conversations to have with them, because they don't show up very often. And so I always ask people when that happens, I'll say, so walk me through how that looks for you. And that's always such a unique conversation to have. And really, as we look at all of these, I mean, this framework allows us to really dig deep into the soul of a person to say, how are you built? It's different for everybody. And how does it work itself out? Jim, I want to say thanks. We get a chance, we're privileged to get a chance to hear your focus every time you're in front of the company, which is never enough. And you get to spend some time. We see your focus play out just in the way you do your presentations, and it's just smart, unemotional. This is the way it is. Information for us that yet tells us how to change our lives, right? How to be healthier, how to have better health at work, how to dig into community when we think of well-being. So I'll just say, from my end, watching you over the last 8 years, thanks for using that focus to keep us on track with a lot of the things that we do. With well-being and with StrengthsFinder, and so I'll just say thanks for doing that. Heather, I'll throw it over to you for a wrap, but I wanted to throw that in there as well.
That's nice, Jim Collison. I think we've all learned a lot about focus today, and I think sometimes the perception of focus is that it's in that zone and that it's, goal-oriented and kind of shuts everything else out to get the work done. I think you've also given us a beautiful example today, Jim, how there is intensity and intentionality to focus, but you've also really woven in beautifully the personality that can come with focus, the personable the personability that can come with focus when you talk about relationships and the goal orientation towards those that you love, and thinking about priorities in your life, not just in a task-oriented way, but also in a people-oriented way. And that's probably a great testament to how your relator lives itself out, that you go deep and genuine with a very special circle. And they're really fortunate to have you as a friend, a family member, a team member. I love one of the words that I think, if we were to, in a nutshell, say what your role is professionally, it's advisor, but I think that would translate personally too, that your focus helps you be a great advisor because you prioritize, you think about what could be, and distill it down into really making differences for people through the great advice you give. So I've decided that advisor can be your word for the day. There's a Thoreau quote that goes with focus, and I think you've illustrated it beautifully today. In the long run, we hit only what we aim at. And to me, that's been a great illustration of, you really do set some great things. You aim at some really important things to our world. And the neat thing is that all of us know you've hit a whole lot of those things that you've aimed at. And as you continue to do that in your career here, that's just a great testament to your focus and how it collaborates with a mission and purpose in our world and in our organization. So thanks for the work that you do. Thanks for your talent on display today. And just really appreciate your being here and just giving us a glimpse into what the world of focus looks like.
Thanks for having me, guys.
Jim, great to have you on. I'm going to start calling you the Great Gandalf. She's going to call you an advisor. We'll just call you the Great Gandalf. We want to remind everyone to take full advantage of all the resources we have available at the Gallup Strengths Center. Head over to gallupstrengthscenter.com. Send us your questions or comments, and if you'd like to be a guest blogger, we are taking those as well now again. And so if you've wanted to write for us and hit the coaches blog, we've got some, if you go out to the coaches blog right now, we actually have some guidelines posted in there that will allow you to kind of see what we're looking for from a blogging standpoint. But if you're interested in doing that, contact us, coaching@gallup.com. Put guest blogger in the subject line, and we'll pull those out. You can also catch the recorded audio and video of both this show and all the past ones is available to all the links for our Facebook group, our YouTube page, our iTunes subscription, the RSS feeds, all that stuff that's out there, including iPhone and Android apps. It's all on the Strengths, or it's all on the Coaches blog. Head over to coaching.gallup.com, and we have a brand new set of meetups coming up as well. Some 30 meetup cities going on around the globe now, and looks like we could add 10 more here in the next month or so. So if there's not one in your city, we'd encourage you to start one. You can contact me directly to help do that. Just send me an email, jim_collison@gallup.com, and I can help you get those going. But maybe one's already in your city and you can attend that. It's over on the Coaches blog, so hit the Meetup tab while you are over there. Don't forget now, every Theme Thursday from here until we're done, we'll have a companion guide, and when we are done, we'll put those together. I've posted a list to all the companion guides we've done so far on our Facebook group, so that's facebook.com/groups/call-to-coach. We've just done 3, so it's not like you've missed a lot, but we are building the rest of those in, and we'll have those all available. All 20 or all 34 of them will be available at the end of the series when we get done. But if you haven't downloaded the companion guide for this one, it's on the live page there, or it's on the Eventbrite link. If you have questions, send me an email. We'll get that to you as well. If you found this useful, we encourage you to share it, and we want to thank everyone for coming out. 2 weeks from now, next Theme Thursday, we're back up again, so hope to have you join us then. And with that, we'll say goodbye, everybody.